In many cultures, belief in jinn remains widespread, even in modern societies. According to Islam, jinn are invisible creatures created by Allah from a subtle fire, capable of good or bad deeds. They sometimes appear in homes, and some people claim to feel a strange presence or experience inexplicable disturbances. Even today, many people use traditional methods for protection, placing sea salt in the corners of their homes or burning bakhoor, Eastern incense. For example, Fatima, a young woman living in Cairo, recounts that after hearing unusual noises in her house, she began burning bakhoor while reciting verses from the Quran and immediately felt calmer. These practices, while deeply rooted in culture, are often combined with more authentic religious protections, such as reciting Ayat al-Kursi, Surah 2, verse 255, or daily supplications. The Quran itself speaks of the jinn in Surah al-Jinn 72, explaining that they can listen, observe, and sometimes influence humans, but that no creature can harm without Allah's permission. Thus, true protection comes from remembering God, even though cultural rituals can provide a sense of psychological security. Have you ever felt an inexplicable presence in your home? Share your experience. Do you believe that salt or bakhoor can truly protect against invisible influences? Comment. In your opinion, which methods offer genuine spiritual protection and why? Step 1. Historical and Qur'anic context. Approximately 2,500 characters. Jinn are mentioned several times in the Quran, notably in Surah al-Jinn 72, where Allah explains their existence, their free will, and their ability to interact with humans. In the story of Solomon, the Quran relates that some jinn served the Prophet by divine permission, building palaces and performing tasks impossible for humans alone. This shows that jinn are neither imaginary nor entirely malevolent. Some can be benevolent, others harmful, but none can act outside the will of Allah. Today, these stories resonate with contemporary experiences. For example, Ahmed, a father in Dubai, recounts how his daughter complained of strange noises in her room at night. After reciting Ayat al-Kursi and protective surahs like Al-Falaq and An-Nas daily, they noticed a gradual disappearance of these disturbances. This blend of faith, Quranic recitation, and cultural practices, such as burning bakhoor, demonstrates that modern spiritual protection often combines tradition and religious guidance. Islamic texts emphasize that true protection does not come from superficial methods or superstitions, but from constant remembrance of Allah and the recitation of His verses. However, practices such as using salt or a bakhoor, while not directly based on the Quran, can contribute to a psychologically calming environment, especially when combined with prayer and recitation. Have you ever used the Quran for protection and felt an immediate change? Do you think that cultural or religious methods are more effective against invisible disturbances? Share your personal experiences. Have you noticed that reciting the Quran or specific rituals has actually protected you? Step 2. Science and skepticism. Approximately 2,500 characters. While certain practices, such as placing salt around the house or burning bakhoor, are widespread, modern science attempts to explain their effectiveness through means other than spirituality. Salt, for example, can absorb moisture and purify the air, while bakhoor, through its fragrance, creates a pleasant and relaxing atmosphere. Psychologically, these rituals provide a sense of security and control in the face of the unseen, reducing stress and anxiety related to inexplicable experiences. A contemporary example. Layla, a young woman living in Istanbul, recounts that after moving into a new apartment, she felt uneasy at night. She began burning bakhoor while reciting protective verses from the Quran. According to her, The calming atmosphere and her faith helped her sleep more peacefully, even though she wasn't sure whether the jinn were present or not. In Islam, these cultural methods never replace divine protection. The Quran and Hadiths recommend prayer, constant remembrance of Allah, and the recitation of specific verses such as Ayat al-Kursi or Surahs al-Falaq and An-Nas. Thus, salt and bakhoor can be complementary, but true protection is spiritual. Have you noticed any relief after using cultural rituals, even knowing that they are not prescribed by the Quran? Do you think faith and psychology work together to create real protection? Share your experiences. Have you ever felt a difference through cultural methods combined with prayer or recitation of the Quran? Step 3. Sea salt in the home, myth or reality. Approximately 3,000 characters. For centuries, some Muslim and even non-Muslim families have placed sea salt in the corners of rooms to repel unseen presences. This practice is particularly widespread in the Middle East and South Asia, where it is believed that salt absorbs negative energies and protects the home. But what does Islam say? No Quranic verse or authentic hadith mentions the use of salt as a means of protection against jinn. True protection, according to the Quran, lies in remembering Allah, reciting protective verses like Ayat al-Kursi, and performing regular prayers. Salt can, however, have a psychological effect. It creates a feeling of security and can help reduce anxiety in a space perceived as haunted. In the modern world, many people share experiences related to this practice. For example, Sami, a student in Amman, explains that his roommates were complaining about strange noises at night. He started placing bowls of salt in each corner and reciting protective surahs. According to him, this combination calmed the atmosphere of the house, and the noises diminished. Although salt has no direct spiritual power, the ritual strengthened their faith and their sense of control over the unseen. This practice illustrates how cultural traditions and religious guidance can complement each other. Salt acts as a symbol of purification, while the recitation of the Quran remains the central element of protection. It is essential to understand that salt never replaces supplications and prayer, but can strengthen the confidence and serenity of the inhabitants. Have you ever tried putting salt in your house to feel more protected? Do you believe this ritual has a real or purely psychological effect? Share your experience. Has salt brought you a real sense of security in your home? Step 4. The bakhoor, a cultural and religious perspective. Bakhoor, a traditional incense used in the Middle East and South Asia, is known for perfuming the home and creating a pleasant atmosphere. For generations, families have burned bakhoor to welcome guests, purify spaces, and, according to some beliefs, protect themselves from unseen presences. However, in Islam, no Quranic ruling recommends bakhoor as a means of protection against jinn. True protection lies in prayer, reciting protective surahs, Al-Falaq, An-Nas, Ayat al-Kursi, and constant remembrance of Allah. Nevertheless, bakhoor can complement these practices by promoting peace of mind and strengthening a sense of psychological security. Contemporary experiences illustrate this combination. For example, Noor, a mother in Riyadh, recounts that after her children began complaining of strange sensations in their room, she burned bakhoor while reciting Ayat al-Kursi and protective surahs daily. According to her, the atmosphere became calmer, and her children stopped expressing their fear. Here, the bakhoor acts as a psychological catalyst. While the spiritual protection comes from the recitation, this practice demonstrates that cultural traditions and religious precepts can coexist. Bakhoor never replaces prayer or Quranic invocations, but it can strengthen serenity and spiritual grounding in people in an environment that they may feel vulnerable. Have you ever burned bakhoor while reciting protective verses? What did you feel? Do you think that faith and cultural rituals can complement each other effectively? Share your experience. Did the bakhoor contribute to a feeling of protection, or was it purely symbolic for you? Step 5. Real-life cases and contemporary narratives. Approximately 4,000 characters. Around the world, many people report experiences where they felt a strange presence or unexplained disturbances in their homes. While science can sometimes explain certain phenomena as noise, fatigue, or stress, these experiences are often interpreted through the lens of faith and culture. For example, in Casablanca, a young couple noticed objects being moved around in their apartment and unusual noises at night. After consulting a local imam, they began reciting ayat al-Kursi and surahs al-Falaq and an-Nas every night. At the same time, they burned bakhoor to create a calming atmosphere. According to them, the combination of faith and cultural rituals gradually reduced these disturbances, and they now feel safe in their home. Another case in Jakarta tells the story of a student who lived in a university dormitory and heard voices at night. She began placing salt in the corners of her room and reciting the Quran daily. After a few weeks, the voices stopped, and she explained that the feeling of protection came as much from faith as from the ritual. These contemporary accounts reflect what is found in the Quran and the Hadiths. In Surah Al-Jinn 72, the jinn are described as sentient beings capable of both good and evil, but none of them can act outside the will of Allah. The stories of prophets, such as Solomon, show that ultimate protection comes from invoking Allah and obeying His commands, even though cultural practices can foster a sense of security. Thus, whether through salt, bakhoor, or other rituals, these practices often function as psychological and symbolic complements to Qur'anic spiritual protection. They strengthen faith, daily discipline, and inner calm in the face of experiences that are difficult to explain. Have you experienced any unexplained events at home? What have you done to protect yourself? Do you think these cultural practices actually strengthen divine protection, or are they primarily symbolic? Share your story. How do you combine faith and traditions to create a spiritually safe environment? Step 6. Recommended Islamic practices for protection. Approximately 3,500 characters. In Islam, spiritual protection relies primarily on the constant remembrance of Allah and the recitation of specific verses from the Quran. Among the most recognized methods are verse al-Kursi, Surah 2, verse 255. This verse is considered one of the most powerful protections against all negative influences. Many Muslims recite ayat al-Kursi after every prayer and before sleeping to feel safe. Protective surahs al-Falaq and an-Nas are short but powerful surahs, recited to repel evil, including that of the jinn ruqya, recitation of verses from the Quran for healing purposes. It is an authentic practice consisting of reciting Quranic passages over oneself or one's home to ask for Allah's protection. Regular prayer and dhikr, remembrance of Allah. Consistency in prayer and dhikr strengthens faith and creates a protective spiritual field in daily life. Contemporary experiences show that these practices work in a concrete and psychologically calming way. For example, Layla, a teacher in Kuwait, recounts that her home was prone to nighttime disturbances. After establishing a daily routine of ruqya, Islamic healing, and burning bakhoor, incense, to create a calming atmosphere, she experienced complete tranquility. The bakhoor was merely a supplement. The true protection came from her faith and the recitations. These Islamic practices are therefore both spiritual and psychological. They allow one to feel safe, but above all, they establish a direct link with Allah. who is the true source of protection. Cultural rituals, such as salt or bakhoor, can accompany these practices, but should never replace them. What Islamic practices do you use to protect your home and family? Did you notice a difference after regularly reciting Ayat al-Kursi or al-Falaq and an-Nas? Share your methods of spiritual protection. Which surahs or prayers have helped you the most to feel safe? In summary, protecting one's home and family from unseen influences, such as jinn, is primarily a matter of faith and connection with Allah. The Qur'an and Hadiths emphasize the importance of reciting protective verses, regular prayer and dhikr to establish strong spiritual protection. Cultural practices, such as placing salt in the corners of the house or burning bakhoor, are often used as a complement. They offer psychological comfort and create a calming atmosphere. But they never replace Qur'anic protections. Contemporary accounts, from students to families around the world, show that combining faith and cultural rituals can strengthen feelings of security and soothe the mind in the face of the unseen. This balanced approach illustrates an ancient wisdom, using the means at our disposal while placing our trust in Allah. As the Qur'an explains in Surah Al-Jinn 72, the jinn can only cause harm by Allah's permission, and true protection comes from Him. In your opinion, what is the best way to combine faith and traditions for protection? Do you prefer to rely on cultural rituals, Quranic protections, or both? Comment below. What methods do you use to create a spiritually safe environment in your home?